Brazilian Defense Ministry released a report highlighting there was nothing that sustained claims of electoral fraud from some of Bolsonaro's supporters after his defeat. France's emerging protest movement gains ground in a sign of increasing strain on Europe's workers shouldering the continent's cost of living crisis. And the summit of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations kicks off in Cambodia with an agenda focused on the economy and the situation in Myanmar. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. The Brazilian Defense Ministry released a report highlighting there was nothing that sustains or backs claims of fraud from some of President Jair Bolsonaro's supporters protesting his October 30th defeat at the country's presidential elections. The report, however, suggested creating a commission comprised of members of civil society and auditing entities to further investigate the functioning of the electronic voting machines. The limitations found were the same ones analysts have been complaining about for decades, but it did not point to evidence of irregularity. This was the first comment by the military on the runoff election, as the transition has begun for President-elect Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva's inauguration on January 1st. And the Brazilian president-elect, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, meets with parliamentarians from allied parties to strengthen the agenda and harmony between the branches of power in view of the transfer of power. President-elect Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva met with the heads of the Chamber of Deputies, Arthur Lira, Rodrigo Pacheco of the Senate, and Rosa Weber of the Federal Supreme Court. During the conversation, the head of the Chamber of Deputies expressed to the president-elect his willingness to help in the governance of his administration. For his part, Lula assured that Brazil has no more time for insults and hatred, while discarding the possibility that President Jair Bolsonaro will issue a coup allegation after his attempt to ignore his failure at the polls on October 30th. The Prime Minister of Peru, Aníbal Torres, denounced the Congress for promoting and executing a dictatorship that is affecting the country. Torres' statements came after learning of the Parliament's refusal to allow him to go to the legislative body to request a vote of confidence on a bill on the executive. Torres declared that it is not possible to govern on the basis of absolute ignorance, criticizing that the head of the Congress, Jose Williams, has responded to his request to ask for a vote of confidence as inadmissible. According to the President of the Council of Ministers, it is not the exclusive power of the lawmakers to promote an initiative in reference to the bill presented that proposes to repeal the law on the vote of confidence. The President of Chile, Gabriel Boris, undertook on Thursday his first tour of La Araucanía, the Mapuche region deeply affected by violence. The Chilean head of state pointed out that his visit aims at assessing the insecurity situation after the Senate decided to extend the state of emergency in force since last May. The president also announced that his tour's intention is to strengthen interministerial work based on the government's priorities in the region, focusing on the people and their security. According to the planned agenda, President Boris will hold a series of meetings with authorities in the region and with victims of violence. The 6th International Cooperation Conference of the Association of Caribbean States opened in Havana. The main objective of the event is to discuss transformation and innovation in the Caribbean region. The inaugural session was attended by the Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel Bermúdez, the President of the Council of Ministers of the organization, Mario Rodolfo Búcaro. During 2 days, the representatives of the members of the association will establish alliances for the economic integration of the Caribbean, especially in trade, transport, sustainable tourism, and natural disasters. During the event, Guatemala's Foreign Minister, Mario Búcaro Flores, also spoke of hope, unity, and resilience in the greater Caribbean at a time when dialogue and international cooperation are essential for the region. Social and trade union organizations in Haiti denounced that the government's decision to increase fuel prices worsens the social crisis in the country. The union organizations assured that the costs in the international market decrease, so this should be reflected in the domestic trade. However, the Ministry of Commerce and Industry confirmed that the costs of gasoline, diesel, and kerosene remain unchanged, in spite of the social discontent. In this context, the social movements indicated that the price increase affects the most vulnerable in the midst of the economic, political, and health crisis suffered by the Caribbean nation. Social and community organizations in Puerto Rico coordinate strategies to confront the Governor Pedro Pierluisi's intentions to push for an increase in electricity rates. About 8 groups asked the Puerto Rican Senate to pass the bill to restructure the $9 billion debt of the state electric power authority, whose privatization process has already been initiated by the government. The spokesperson for the Citizens Front for the Debt Audit declared that the Puerto Rican people will not endure an increase in the electric rate, so all social and political sectors will have to unite to avoid it. The legal representative of the electric and irrigation industry said that the bond guarantee should be judicially annulled, so avoid paying an illegitimate, unsustainable, and unaudited debt. We'll take a short break, but first, remember you can follow us on our TikTok account at TeleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back From the South. The Venezuelan head of state said that preventive measures must be taken to know how to face the consequences of climate change.
The first thing is to address, to create awareness, to continue taking preventive measures. Many of the preventive measures are invisible. They are silent. Unfortunately, they are taken and have given results. Others will. It is simply necessary to educate the population to know how to face the circumstances such as this: education, prevention, mitigation, and a lot of work, as had happened in Las Tejerias, a lot of reconstruction work, repair, assistance. Our people are not orphans. Our people have a government, they have support, they have someone to back them up, as has been demonstrated in Las Tejerias, in El Castaño, and in the rest of the country.
And Hurricane Nicole has weakened to a tropical storm after making landfall in the U.S., according to local meteorological agencies. According to local media, Nicole advanced inland Florida as a Category hurricane, leaving 230,000 businesses and households under a blackout. Also, schools, shops, and non-essential services premises were closed because of the storm conditions. Nicole, which is the first hurricane to hit the U.S. in November in the last 40 years, is still packing maximum sustained winds of up to 60 kilometers per hour. At least 45 of Florida's 67 counties are in a state of emergency because of Nicole, as storm surge, flooding, and heavy downpours are expected. As for the cast point, Nicole will disperse and weaken to a tropical depression on Friday. Protesters from the environmentalist group Just Stop Oil climbed on top of the United Kingdom motorway gantries on Thursday for a fourth day of protests. Footage showed police removing a person from a gantry on the M25 motorway and placing them into a police van. According to reports, Essex and Surrey police officers were dealing with activists climbing gantry on different junctions of the motorway. The group Just Stop Oil demanded the British government to halt new oil and gas projects in the country. The protesters has drawn attention and criticism for targeting artworks in museums. They have also blocked bridges and intersections across London during 2 weeks of protests. And Paris faced another multi-sector strikes on Thursday as France's emerging protest movement gains ground in a sign of increasing strain on Europe's workers shouldering the continent's cost of living crisis. In continuation of protests fueled by inflation and rising petrol costs, the country's main trade union, the General Confederation of Labor, called on the workers across sectors to join the strike, demanding higher wages and opposing pension reforms. Transport in the Paris region was heavily disrupted, with 7 metro lines completely closed, while others only operated at peak times. Since the end of the summer, there have been series of strikes protesting job insecurity and demanding higher wages as prices continue to rise. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Starting on Thursday and rolling out until Sunday, the summit of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations takes place in Cambodia, with an agenda focused on the economy and the situation in Myanmar. After 2 years of being held virtually because of the pandemic, the summit will bring together the leaders of the bloc with other leaders from countries such as China, Russia, India, Japan, South Korea, and representatives of the United Nations Organization. In addition, they are expected to discuss missile exchanges between Pyongyang and Seoul, tensions in the South China Sea, and the trade and diplomatic disputes between Washington and Beijing. During the meeting, the leaders are also expected to discuss the proposal that the ASEAN has continuously extended to the Burmese generals, seeking the implementation of the 5-point consensus plan in order to de-escalate violence in negotiations. The Secretary General of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, China Center Shi Zongjun, reaffirmed his country and Asian nations are expected to deepen cooperation in the future, as the ties between them have been elevated to a comprehensive strategic partnership.
We have maintained our people-to-people exchanges against the backdrop of the pandemic. Through the increase of direct flights between China and ASEAN countries, more students from ASEAN countries are returning to China to resume classes in an orderly manner. We have strengthened exchanges and cooperation in education, culture, and tourism through numerous online and offline activities that attracted tens of thousands of people, especially youth, from both sides.
At a press conference in Beijing on Thursday, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao Lijian said his country will continue to work with the rest of the international community to oppose acts of economic coercion and bullying in science and technology on the part of some countries.
We will continue to work with the rest of the international community to oppose acts of economic coercion and bullying in sci-tech, to jointly safeguard stability of the structure, rules, and foundation of the world economy, as well as security of the global industry and supply chains. In the meantime, we will also use this import-export as an opportunity to continue opening up to the outside world, to create convenience for companies from other countries in making investment and developing business in China, and to jointly build up a more united, more prosperous future.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said on Thursday that normalization of relations between Armenia and Azerbaijan is a prerequisite to the normalization of relations between Armenia and Turkey. At a press conference before leaving for the organization of the Turkic States Summit in Uzbekistan, President Erdogan stated that in the last meeting with the Armenian government, which took place in Prague, he clearly emphasized to Armenia they needed to steer relations with Azerbaijan in a positive direction in order to develop good relations with Turkey. The Turkish leader also noted that the Armenian diaspora in France and the United States were pressuring the Armenian government to impede the process of normalizing the dialogue with Turkey. Meanwhile, Armenian Prime Minister Nicole told his cabinet during a meeting that he proposed creating a demilitarized zone along with its border with Azerbaijan and around the breakaway region of Nagorno-Karabakh. The two countries twice went on war over Azerbaijan's Armenian populated enclave in the 1990s and 2020, while in September more than 200 people from both sides were killed in new clashes. During a meeting hosted by Russian President Vladimir Putin on October 31st, both sides pledged not to use force to resolve the conflict. Lebanon's parliament failed to elect a president for the fifth time on Thursday, bringing the country closer to institutional deadlock amid a deep financial crisis. President Michel Aoun's term ended on October 31st, leaving behind a political void and divisions among political blocs over the makeup of a new cabinet. The Middle East nation has been without a fully functioning government since May. The government was already operating in a caretaker capacity as the country is sinking deeper into a three-year-old financial meltdown. The Ugandan government and communities reinforced security measures to fight Ebola in Kazanda and Mubende, the epicenter of the outbreak in the country. Both districts have been under a lockdown since mid-October, with a dawn to dusk curfew, a ban on personal travel and public places shuttered. The reappearance of the virus after 3 years has sparked fear in the East African nation, with cases now reported in the capital Kampala as the highly contagious disease makes its way through the country of 47 million people. According to the latest Ugandan Health Ministry figures, in all, 53 people have died, including children, out of more than 135 cases.
The deceased is my grandchild. My son, who was called Sekiyinja, was his father, but he passed on a long time ago. He died first, and now his son has followed. The boy died of Ebola, and he died at Mubende Hospital.
We have a disclaimer to announce. Our Facebook page has been hacked and currently displaying content out of our agenda and against our social, moral, political, and informative premises. We stress TeleSUR English is not responsible for these posts that violate Facebook's community standards. We hope this company will give us back our credentials as soon as possible and resume our regular posts on that social network. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media. We are on Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.
In a world that